The Matrix movies are more genius than most people realize. They're full of symbolism, allegory, and metaphor. But even if you only look at the surface, it's a complicated sci-fi story with many modern social and technological parallels, and many of the ideas have transcended cinema and taken on deeper meanings in our society. To put it simply, The Matrix is one of the most important pieces of cinema ever created. And if you consider that it was made at a time before everyone had cell phones and when the internet was still in its infancy, it feels like a prophetic look into the dangers of relying too much on technology. So the new Matrix movie is coming out soon, and I was really excited after watching the trailer, but I couldn't figure out how it was going to continue the story. I mean, they could just tell the same story about a different Neo or maybe a prequel that takes place in another version of the Matrix, but that'd be kind of pointless because it had the same story beats and plot lines and it would never be as good as the original. Trinity and Neo both died at the end of the trilogy, so seeing them in a new trailer means that Neo probably doesn't look like Keanu Reeves, and what we're seeing is basically the spirit of Neo because the one is always made from the same code. Now, the other path it could take is probably something that we've never thought of, and it's going to try to subvert our expectations and change the entire way we see the franchise. Morpheus explained that they don't even know what year it actually is, so this could literally be the very first version of the Matrix that takes place hundreds of years before the original movies. Just because we see cell phones and it looks like a modern 2021 world doesn't mean that this movie takes place after the original. I made a video about how the John Wick movies had so many similarities with the Matrix and how they could have easily been sequels or at least existed in the same universe. But after watching the new trailer, I think it might have accidentally exposed the real secret. There's been so many great Matrix theories and so many great analysis of the story, but I've never seen anyone seriously suggest that the Matrix was never real and everything we saw was just a dream that Neo had. Now, I know it was all a dream is probably the cheapest explanation for any theory, but I think there's more than enough evidence to show that this is all taking place inside of Neo's mind. The first thing I notice is that all three movies start with Neo waking up. And if you add in the fact that the person who sets him free is named after the god of dreams, this story starts to feel more like a computer programmer's fantasy and less like a real thing. I mean, what are the odds that the savior of humanity just so happens to be a computer programmer and has to fight evil programs inside of a computer? At least with other Chosen One stories, the protagonist is pulled into a world that they have no experience or interest in. It's not like John Connor was an MIT student working on creating AI and time travel, and then all of a sudden he's the chosen one in a war with time travel and AI. And don't you think it's strange that Neo being a hacker and a programmer never comes up in any of the movies? I mean, he starts out by making special programs for people, but this skill never seems to help him in the Matrix. You would think that he would have beaten the Matrix by hacking into the system or creating a virus, but if you think about everything in this trilogy as metaphor and allegory, this is exactly what he does. He hacks into the Matrix, reprograms the antivirus program, he interacts with many different functions of the system, and then he eventually uploads a source code and reboots the Matrix so it functions correctly again. When talking to a therapist, Neo says that he feels like his dreams are real, and he's fully aware of what the Matrix is. So it's not a big stretch to assume that maybe the Matrix dreams drove him crazy, and the blue pills are stopping him from having hallucinations. So when he stops taking the pills, he goes back to thinking he's at war with evil AI programs. Oh, but you know I can't stop there because the rabbit hole goes much deeper, and anyone who's seen the Matrix movies knows that the rabbit hole analogy plays a critical role in the story. It's no secret that the first movie shared a lot of similarities with the Tales of Alice in Wonderland, and the new trailer was pretty obvious with the Wonderland references too. So the fact that this continues to be a major theme of the story begs the question, if the franchise started out like Alice in Wonderland, why wouldn't it have the same ending? I don't need to get too deep into the Wonderland stories, but the final twist is that Alice fell asleep and dreamed the entire adventure, and all of the strange and colorful characters she sees in Wonderland are all just in her imagination. The two stories don't match beat for beat, but many of the characters and symbolism in all three of the Matrix movies continue with the Wonderland theme. Alice first meets the Cheshire Cat at a crossroads, and throughout the story he acts as a personal guide that gives her choices instead of directly telling her what to do. Morpheus and Neo's first interaction goes the exact same way. When he gives Neo the choice between escaping out of the window and allowing the agents to catch him, both choices sound equally crazy, just like the choices the cat gives to Alice. And this is a continuing theme with their relationship. Both characters present philosophical ideas that force Alice and Neo to explore deeper levels of thinking and question their previously accepted realities. Now it's obvious that the Wachowskis modeled Morpheus after the Cheshire Cat because both characters speak in a calm and measured tone, their body language is always relaxed and bordering on lazy, and they always flash that mischievous smile to punctuate their sentences. But if all that wasn't proof enough, when Neo has his fight with Morpheus in the training program, The first stance he uses is called the cat. The next important character Alice meets is the caterpillar. When Neo first arrives, the Oracle is preoccupied and facing away from him, just like the caterpillar is with Alice. The Oracle and the caterpillar are both surrounded by leaves and nature. They're both constantly smoking, and there's even floating letters on the refrigerator similar to the letters that the caterpillar exhales. Just like the caterpillar, the Oracle asks thought-provoking questions instead of giving direct answers, and they both offer something to eat when the conversation is over. There's so many parallel characters that Neo meets in the following movies, like the well-dressed eccentric man that's always hosting a party, or his visibly unstable friend that hangs around. There's the identical twins that finish each other's sentences, or the army of nearly identical soldiers that do the bidding of the story's main antagonist. I'll stop there because the point isn't to explain every similarity in each story, but I felt it necessary to point out the most obvious ones just to illustrate how the entire franchise is a modern retelling of Alice in Wonderland. So I asked the question again. If The Matrix starts out like Alice in Wonderland and has so many similarities throughout the franchise, why wouldn't they both have the same ending? I think this is the entire point of making the fourth movie. The Wachowskis let the story get out of hand before, and they wanted to finish it with a proper Wonderland ending. I know that everything isn't going to make sense in a story as complicated as this, and every story is always going to have some flaws or contradictions because, at the end of the day, it's a fictional story that somebody made up. But when I see structural flaws in a story like this, my immediate thought is that maybe they could be intentional breadcrumbs that lead to a deeper and more complex interpretation of the story. I've always loved how open the Matrix universe is to so many great theories and explanations, but this idea honestly is the only real thing that makes any sense. Now, we can argue all day about the motivations and purpose of the Matrix, and we can say that Zion is just another program inside of the Matrix, so no one is ever really unplugged. And there's probably 100 or more different legitimately possible explanations that make sense, but this one not only explains what the Matrix is doing now, but it also answers many of the questions from the past. No one in the Matrix universe actually knows what year it is. They don't know what really happened in the past or exactly what the purpose of the Matrix is. Now, the story we're told is that humans and machines went to war, and the humans scorched the sky because the machines needed the sun as a power source. And even though they shouldn't have had enough power to continue the fight, somehow the machines still won the war, enslaved humanity, and used them as batteries. The obvious flaw with this idea is that the human body is a terrible battery, and it would take more energy to keep each person alive than they would contribute to the system. So why do they keep us alive then? The most obvious answer is that they actually use some sort of nuclear power as a battery, and they use humans for processing power like a giant neural network. Now, it's possible that true artificial intelligence isn't possible, so the machines need human brain power to be able to think, learn, and function the way they do. Even though that's a highly probable conclusion, I think the real answer is something far more interesting. I think the humans actually won the war, but they destroyed the planetary ecosystem and then they programmed the machines to keep humans alive in a virtual reality paradise. The machines are programmed to think that they won the war, and that they need humans as a source of power. The machines slave away to keep us alive while we live blissfully unaware in a digital utopia. The machines continue on because they're the ones under the delusion that they're in control, because, after all, a machine can only follow its programming. Earth is destroyed, but we live with all the safety and comforts of a modern world while the machines endlessly slave away to keep us in blissfully ignorant comfort. Just think about this. If the Resistance achieved their goal of unplugging everybody from the Matrix, they would have billions of unplugged humans all in need of medical and psychological care just to function in the real world. Now, Zion can barely feed everyone now, so how would it be able to sustain billions of confused and depressed humans on a dead planet? After humanity burned out the sky, they really did beat the machines. Maybe once the machines surrendered, the humans, now living on a planet without any other means of survival, programmed their former adversaries to believe that they'd won the war. And maybe, just maybe, they continue to reprogram the robots to keep humans alive and happy in a simulated reality. If the machines only need us to stay alive so they can use us as a source of power, why not just put everyone into a chemically induced coma? Why do they put so much effort into making sure we're all so safe, happy, and comfortable? I think Morpheus is probably the most important character in the series. He's responsible for finding, training, and guiding the person who would eventually save humanity. He's a vocal and spiritual leader of Zion, and he's directly responsible for freeing many of the people from the Matrix. But there's some really questionable details about his character. In Christian literature, Zion is a promised land, a shelter from the oppression of Babylon. In the movie, Zion is a sanctuary for the humans who are unplugged from the Matrix. So in both stories, Zion is a place that freed women and men go to escape the oppression of the powers that be. Now, the thing that exposes Morpheus is the fact that his ship is named the Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, and he was responsible for conquering and destroying Zion. So if Morpheus's goal is to help free humans from the Matrix, why is he the captain of a ship named after the king of Babylon?
You know you done fucked up, right?
Oh, but it gets deeper. In Greek mythology, Morpheus is the god of dreams, and the Matrix is designed to keep people asleep. So why would someone that devotes his life to waking people up name himself after a god of dreams?
You know you done fucked up, right?
Considering that Morpheus is the son of Hypnos, the god of sleep, it's not too much of a stretch to imagine that the architect is Hypnos. After all, he was the one that designed the Matrix to keep humans in a permanent state of sleep. Keeping that connection in mind, it would make sense that Morpheus would actually be on the same side as the architect. And it's not hard to believe that Morpheus isn't trying to free the humans and save Zion, but considering the name of his ship, he wants to help the architect destroy and control Zion. Oh, but it still gets deeper. Out of all the people in Zion, Morpheus is the only one that truly believes in the prophecy of the One. And the reason he believes in it is because a computer program told him about it. This isn't a fantasy world with wizards and magic, it's a science fiction world with robots and AI. And considering that the Oracle's primary function is to study the human psyche so the Matrix can more accurately simulate a real world, why do we trust that she has humanity's best interest in mind? She presents herself as a nurturing, loving grandmother, but behind that comforting smile, she's a computer program that was designed to make humans feel comfortable inside of the Matrix. The prophecy seems like it has a hidden motivation too, because it encourages the freed humans to search for anomalies in the Matrix that the programs might have missed. That's why she has kids in her house with Neo-level powers, because if they all believe she's on her side, they won't try and use their powers to overthrow the Matrix. So it's possible that there's always multiple different anomalies at one time, and part of her job is to keep an eye on them and gain their trust. Morpheus could be a human that was enticed by the Matrix just like Cypher was. Or he could be a program that was uploaded into a human body the same way that Agent Smith did. He could have been created to keep everyone asleep even when they unplug from the Matrix, so the power balance stays in the hands of the machines. His role in Zion could be to maintain the illusion that the humans have hope and one day they can beat the Matrix, even though all he's really doing is removing the problematic humans from the program. His relationship with Neo could simply be to influence him to do exactly what the architect wants him to do and keep track of how powerful he gets so he can assess and report the level of risk to the Matrix.